I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Dr. Bones, listening to Dr. Bones.
Good afternoon, this is Dr. Bones live here for another edition of Blogger's Corner. Unfortunately, Britt is out for the weekend, so she'll be returning next week. And in her place, we have a special guest blogger. You all know her on Twitter as @ForgottenV, so welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So, first off, like what we normally do is talk about TV shows, but since we don't watch the same TV shows, no problem. So I'm going to kick it into gear here with some rock and roll news, some pretty interesting stuff actually that have been read off the Rolling Stone app. Just recently, actually, Mick Jagger, Sting, Dave Gilmour were signing a letter urging Scotland to stay in the UK because, as we know, that referendum's coming up. I believe it's on the 18th of September.
Yeah, worrying.
And it's essentially giving Scotland a chance to kind of be independent from the UK if they so choose, but they're saying, it's not a good idea, you should stay. That's what keeps us all together.
Well, we're a small country. I mean, there's a lot of things that are already divided when it comes to students, which is worrying. So I just think, we're a small country and we should all be together.
No, I totally agree, and it does make sense. So I can see the kind of plea for it, and be honestly, at least on this side of the pond, it'd be a little weird. Thing, because essentially generalizing the UK's England, Ireland, Scotland, and saying the UK, well, wait a minute, Scotland's not part of the UK anymore, so now they're independent, and just that doesn't necessarily get confusing, just something you'd have to adapt to, but I don't think it's too bright on their end just to separate. I mean, like, it's kind of, together we stand united, pretty much, together we stand united, we fall, right? So
yeah, definitely.
So it's just, go ahead.
Well, I think it's just hard. I think it just builds prejudice throughout the country, and I think that's sad.
Well, I can see that point. I mean, just because it's obviously we'll say different walks of life, and when a country separates or wants to separate, it's not always a good thing. I mean, per example, years ago, and this was the second referendum that happened in 1994. The province of Quebec wanted to separate from the rest of Canada. But in lieu of that, they wanted pretty much all the, we'll call it royalties. So they still want the whole Canadian passport, same currency, sort of thing. Well, you're not really independent if you're still wanting the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's almost wanting, it's just choosing what you want as opposed to anything else, really. I just think we're too small a country, really, and I think we should, stick together.
Well, I would hope so. So we'll have to see. And yeah, just literally probably about a month away, just a little bit over a month away. So I'd be curious to see how that turns out, because in Quebec, the vote was very, very, very close. I mean, the vote to keep Quebec part of Canada won by just a small margin. So it's kind of scary, and it's one of those things that I couldn't even dream of Canada without Quebec, or just a province missing completely, whether it's Quebec or Western province or Eastern province. It just doesn't make sense, just it doesn't sound right.
No, because it's a whole country, isn't it? It's a whole community.
Exactly. So that was one of the first ones I saw, but I'm at the same time too, I'm not surprised that we'll call all the heavy hitters kind of got on board to kind of start signing it, i.e. the stars, that sort of thing, and the rock stars, the people who have grounds in the UK, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, the list goes on and on and on. And having all those guys together, usually stars in some cases.
It's a massive fan base, isn't it? So they're going to have more of an effect.
Exactly my point. They're applying to their fans, because most time they wasn't like, oh yeah, they're doing this. Well, yeah, I can see that. I will do that. Let's keep them together.
Yeah.
And then
so
it was interesting. It was the first thing that caught my eye when I saw that. It just because we don't always, even though obviously the world news is on TV, we don't always get all of it. So usually most of the time we see all the crappy stuff, the wars in Israel, the Gaza Strip, all that fun stuff. But nothing about this. When I saw it, I was like, I had no idea. So.
Do you listen to BBC World Service? That's pretty good. Or it used to be pretty good when I used to listen to it.
No, what I usually listen to is as the Canadian. It's a broadcasting company called CBC, and
right.
usually they're pretty good of covering like all world news. It's just a matter of getting the time to listen to it, just because obviously myself and you, a lot of the people are always busy, so you don't always have the few minutes to sit down and listen, at least at the times you want to.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So I try to keep current as much as possible, and like sometimes in the paper, it'll give you most of the information, but it depends on which paper you're reading, because a lot of times it'll be left wing or way right wing. So
it's selective in what they tell you. So
yeah,
you need to be impartial and try and listen as well as sort of read, and then you get a fuller picture.
Well, that's right. They essentially want to tell you the bad stuff.
Well, yeah. Well, that's what makes stories.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, yeah. And some of it's just like, oh, I get so sick of reading. Like, I want to see something good for once, And I'm not talking about something in the arts and entertainment section. I'm talking about like front page news,
Well, yeah, no, I think everybody feels the same, but unfortunately, it doesn't sell papers, does it? So
no.
I think that's the point. People also like a bit of doom and gloom.
No, very true. But yeah, so it's but at the same time too is like, with the news, whether bad or good, it's interesting to talk about, just because, especially with people at work, because you're always going to get a different opinion.
Yeah, but then opinions make a world, don't they? Which is a good thing. It's positive in a lot of ways, but as long as the negotiations and arguments work together and people listen, I think it's listening is the important thing.
Well, that's it, and it's all how it's approached too, because some people that I know, I'm not going to generally say a lot of people, but there's some people that I know where, they feel where if you kind of go in with guns blazing, kind of like yelling, swearing, that you're going to get what you want. Not the case, because normally after a few seconds that falls on deaf ears, people aren't going to listen anymore.
Well, because anger and arrogance, is not getting your point across. You're just, letting off steam, really.
Exactly, and it drives me nuts too. And it's one of those things, I don't even bother arguing with him. I just kind of nod along, just because like it's not going to get through at all.
No, exactly.
but on to better news. This was really cool when I saw this. They've in Seattle, Washington, in the U.S., they've finally broken ground for the Jimi Hendrix Park.
Oh wow!
Which is going to be really really amazing, and it's going to take probably about a year or so roughly to build, because they want to add a lot of stuff, because they want to make it a place where just like some parks where you can come, you can relax, and kind of get an artistic feel. So I guess they're going to have a lot of stuff like that throughout the park, and it's going to be essentially right across the street from the African American History Museum.
Oh, fantastic.
So it's a great place to put it. So you kind of got a 2-in-1. You got all that culture, history, plus you got the artistic side of pretty much one of the best guitarists that ever lived.
Well, you're going to attract all age groups to that. That's fantastic.
Well, that's something I would definitely want to go see.
Oh yeah, too.
I love my 60s and 70s, and Hendrix just is another one of those sad cases, died too young, but also kind of revolutionized the fact that he was a left-handed guitarist. Like no other left-handed guitarist came up at that time and was that good, and just kind of blows you away.
Well, definitely. I think the dying young seems to be, with artists, it just seems to be the way sometimes, and that's what partly what makes them legends. Right,
and it's kind of sad that it takes the dying young of a sad case like that to happen, but at the same time too is they have left their mark, and it's always one of those things I've mentioned before where I'd be so curious to see what they'd be doing now if they hadn't passed away or done themselves in, however it happened when they were younger.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things you think about. It's like, what? I would have liked to go know that band, but I can't now because the guy's gone because either he OD'd or what have you, and he's dead now. It's like, well,
it's like Jim Morrison, isn't it? I mean, he was so young, and I visited his grave in Paris, and it's just unbelievable because the music is still so powerful.
Oh, I love it. I mean, I was the other day about a week ago or so when I interviewed Rob from the Bedroom Hour. We'll get to your blog on this in a second. But we were going over the album, and the song called "I See Suns" at the very end. It's got the clapping at the end, and their singer Stuart. It's kind of all a cappella. It's like sound really good. But what it reminded me of is the Doors song "My Wild Love."
Yeah.
Where it's all a cappella, and it's such a good tune. It's like, and that reminded me instantly right of it. So.
Well, I think it was the variety, the diversity of their music. There were just so many different styles within, the same group, which I think was so powerful with the Doors. Same as the Beatles.
Well, I mean, having a producer like what's his name, Martin, Sir Martin. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
No.
Their main producer, Sir.
Producer. Crikey.
Yeah, exactly. That's and this should be like popping right out for me, and I'm blanking on name. Sir Martin something, but he did a lot of the scores for them, especially for like songs like Strawberry Fields, like Eleanor Rigby, and that sort of thing. And go ahead.
No, the thing with the Beatles, though, I mean, their music is, you see the younger generation, and they can't believe that some of their George Martin.
That's it. I was about to say George Martin, and I didn't want to cut you off. So.
Some of their music, I think the younger generation now, they don't realise. They sort of think, well, I thought that was a new song, and you think, no, it's been around, for such a long time, and their influence on music is just so great, huge. I mean, it's just incredible.
Well, from each album being different, I mean, their first like full studio album, Sgt. Pepper's. I mean, that in itself was like a revolutionary album, like right there.
Oh, most definitely, and the artwork.
Yeah, well, that's legendary. That's always going to go down, and that's been copied so many times and used in so many different things. So if people don't know the Beatles, at least know the artwork from the cover.
And I have a vinyl copy.
Oh, do you really?
Oh yeah, I do.
I have a few. That's one of the lists I don't have. I have the White Album, which is my favorite album by far. And
I just think it's the diversity of their music. There's nothing not to like. I think it just appeals to all generations and all levels of people. There will be a song or songs that you like.
No, absolutely.
Which is amazing.
Well, that's the thing is, I know I like a lot of people like I grew up on them because of my father was a huge fan, and he's got a copy of Sgt. Pepper's on vinyl, but I don't.
You'll have to go round there, pop round and swap.
Yeah, I've tried to grab it a few times, but.
What, it's under a glass cabinet, is it, with a lock?
Well, essentially, yeah, because I mean, he's got the copy he has. He got as a gift years ago at as a previous employment, and it was one of the original copies when it was first pressed and released. So,
wow.
This thing's like almost like in a shrine,
Yeah, well, you can understand it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so.
You might get it in the will, maybe.
Oh. Either way, I mean, it's just something to see, just to know that it came directly from the UK, and this was like. One of the first, let's say, a few thousand copies, or maybe more. Who knows? But either way, it was when it was first pressed and released, and I was like, that's an amazing piece of history to have.
Yeah, wow, definitely.
So, I mean, I have some of the other classics, like just from that generation in general. But my one that I really like, that's I kind of keep close, is Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because that album was made in about a year and a half, and the stuff they were doing at that time had never been done before. And the fact they got to work properly was just mind blowing. I mean, that stuff did not happen at that time period, at least not done that well.
I saw them live at Nebworth, and they were mind blowing.
So yeah, so that's my 2 cents on that. I got one more piece, and then we'll get to your blogs here. And this is incredible, and I can't believe it's taken this long for this to happen. But Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, for the first time in a 38-year career, has finally had an album hit number one.
Wow, cool.
And I'm not sure how it's going to long last. I mean, the critics really like it, but they don't think it's going to last more than a few weeks at the top and then it kind of slowly drop down. But at the same time, too, is, you know what, it's sold about 131,000 copies at this point. But either way, at least, you know, you can have, so you at least have one number one album.
Fantastic.
Because he's another musician that I don't think gets enough credit. And, I mean, I've seen him a few times live, and I really like the stuff. I really like his music, and it's don't have enough good things to say about him. And the one concert of his I saw, it has to be at least 10 years ago now. They hadn't really done an album. They were kind of just touring and, you know, playing like recent stuff and older stuff. But when they played Mary Jane's Last Dance live, that was probably one of the best songs I've ever seen live. Because like I really like solos, but they got to be, in my opinion, no, they have to be done well, just like other people. But they dried it out like a lot of bands do, but it was done very smoothly and very, very well. So just like, it's one of those things like you're just really getting into it. It's like, this song's not ending, but I'm like loving this.
Yeah, brilliant.
So yeah, I just saw that and was like, I never knew that he never had a number one album, because like I just bought the music because I liked it and I didn't care if it was number one or not. That wasn't an issue in my mind. So you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely.
All right. So since we were talking about the Bedroom Hour, you just recently started blogging. We all know that you're multiverse and multi-talented and constantly going to go with your artwork, micro poetry.
If you like.
Pardon?
You can carry on with the compliment.
Yeah. So between the artistry and the micro poetry, and there's not enough time to go over everything you do. So.
Well, I mean, basically, I decided to challenge myself. I mean, I started with the micro poetry. And I started with about 35 followers on Twitter at the same time as Square Pig. So he was about one of the first people that I actually used to have a bit of banter with. We had similar amounts of followers. And then I just found a niche. I've always written poetry, and it was just something I thought, you know, I'd enjoy. And I didn't really get a lot of response, but I was enjoying doing it because it's quite difficult to write poems with 140 characters.
I was just about to say that.
To make sense, really. Well. But so then with the blog, I just decided it was a good way to kind of share some of my short stories, because I write short stories as well. And it was a challenge, really, because to write a music review, I did a live review for the Mr. Peeps Puppet Rebellion collaboration in Manchester, and I really sort of did it because Mr. Peeps tweeted saying, are there any sort of bloggers out there that fancy it? And I thought, yeah, I'm a writer, I can do that. So, and then actually the reality of it, I went, oops, it's hard.
Well, that's right. It's one of those things, it sounds easier than it is, just because there's a lot involved, like, and we talked about this briefly before we went on the air. You know, you don't want to be too long-winded, and you don't want to be too short. You want to kind of get the point across, but there's so much involved. Like, I mean, you can really, really pick apart. Like, besides the following, you can pick apart one song, like, and just completely shred it, but not in a mean way, you know. But so you know what, the tempo is. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, the thing was, the gig had sort of 4 bands that I really wanted to see. So it kind of, for me, I didn't have to worry too much. I knew a lot of their songs, so I knew I could be positive with it. Equally, you know, you can say certain bits, but it was more the fact, for me, I write short stories and poetry, and that comes from me. So to actually have to write about someone else's music is a completely different, you know, thing to write. So it was the challenge, but I like challenges. So I was pleased with what I achieved. I thought I wanted it to be a bit of a story from the beginning of Arrival and the end, but also to sort of get people to feel like they were at the gig.
Right.
And that was really my point, because it was great. And if I could go to more gigs, I mean, obviously I live in Somerset, so to get to Manchester is quite a trek. but that doesn't mean to say, you know, I'd love to get to more gigs in and around. I mean, you know, wherever really.
Well, you know, and you're right with that one, and that's the thing is too. Is I mean, there's a lot of gigs. Not that they're too far, but it's just a matter of finding the time to actually get down to see them. Because I saw a show about 3 weeks ago now, about 3 weeks ago, and I actually had the band doing an in-house interview a few weeks ago, which was a lot of fun. And we talked about the show, and it was really good. And I didn't do a review on it mainly because I put half of it up live, and you know I put up like pictures and stuff like that. So kind of little comments here and there, but nothing too in depth because I wasn't sure how to go about it. But I was figuring to myself, you know what, these guys are going to be on the show in a few weeks anyways. So when they come on, we'll talk about the show and go a little bit more in depth. That way, I can say a lot more than I'd be able to type out and kind of get my point across without.
It's difficult. I mean, writing. I mean, you're always editing and you're rereading what you've written. And I think, I mean, I'm lucky because in Somerset, obviously, we have Glastonbury, and I've been several times sort of in the past. But next year is one thing. I'd love to go to Glastonbury, but I'm also working on, you know, there's certain bands I really love from Manchester, like Puppet Rebellion, Unassisted, and, you know, I'm constantly in contact with a local venue in Frome, which is fantastic. It'd be ideal for those bands, and it's called the Cheese and Grain. But I'm constantly trying to kind of get the bands down here because I think, you know, it's fantastic to be in Manchester, but there's a lot of people that maybe aren't able to get there, and these guys need to be out there, I think.
No, well, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, I'm a big fan of Puppet Rebellion as well. Obviously, as you know, and a lot of listeners know, I've had them on twice in the show, and for both their debut EP and their newest one, and I just No Means Yes, and it was really good. And when I was talking to Simon about it when we did the interview, it was like, you know, it's amazing to me the amount of progression from the first EP to now, because. Yeah. Just not just musically growing, but even the recording process. One of the biggest things is a lot of debut EPs, depending on how they're recorded, meaning whether it's done by themselves or they have a producer doing it. No, a lot of it's just beginner mistakes. It's nothing really big, but just beginner mistakes. You know, because the first one, you know, the first EP, Chemical Friends, Simon's vocals were a little bit louder than the rest of the music, but now with the No Means Yes, it balanced out a lot more. So they kind of learn from it. So it shows growth and kind of aspiration, saying, you know what, we love doing this, and we're going to keep on working hard to make it right.
Well, it's great when you go to a gig and they're playing new music as well, because that, you know, it just shows that they're developing and progressing, which is fantastic.
Oh, and that's actually what the Unassisted was saying, because that's one question I like to ask when I interview the bands, like, well, do you ever play new stuff and that sort of thing, and, you know, how well does it go over, you know, do people enjoy it, and that sort of thing.
Well, I think sometimes with the new music, obviously, you're challenging, you know, the audience, aren't you, because they don't know it, but what's good is you're actually sharing it, so then next time you've got it on SoundCloud, they're going, oh yeah, I've heard that live. And it's, you know, and it's good. It shows progression. That's the way it should be, really.
Well, exactly. And you know, and that's what makes it interesting. That's what music's all about. Is it's constant evolution, constant progression. Because, you know, music has got to change. Whether, you know, one band kind of starts streamlining of like a brand new form nobody's heard of, or just the fact, you know, they've like you have a kind of challenge themselves, saying, you know, listen, we've done this way, let's try this a little bit differently. Maybe we can go in this direction with this and see how it works. And 9 times out of 10, it turns out well. And that's what makes it so much fun, because you always, at least myself, I always want to kind of hear what the band's going to do next.
I think there's another band I'd really love to see live, Science. You know, Chemicals for Breakfast blew me away. I mean, they've suddenly, you know, stepped up a notch and gone to another league, and I just think they'd be fantastic live. I've heard really amazing things.
Oh,
I know Fez the 70's really into Science, and he used to, you know, sort of talk to me a lot about, you know, how great they were, because he's seen them loads of times, and I just think that's one, you know, group that are really up and coming.
Well, absolutely. I mean, from like the first single they gave me, zebra to chemicals for breakfast. I was like, this is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, like, I really enjoyed it, and just that, and Dad, you're right, just how that 70s feel, like, kind of the, sounds like, kind of somewhat, like, almost a distorted wah lapel for the very beginning, with the keyboards and everything. Like, this is awesome. Like, this kind of, even if you're not from that time period, it still kind of brings you back, right?
Well, I just think the level they've stepped to though is just so professional and really slick, and it just, for me, well, just blew me away. And I just think I've shared it, like all of the bands, new music wise, Boondock Hippie. There's a lot, that I enjoy, and I just think, I share them with people because I think a lot of my friends are stuck in the mainstream, and I think they don't always open their minds to new music, and I think Twitter is fantastic for that, really, because it does, you do get recommendations from, the likes of Nessie, who powers on as always, with her blog and everything, but she's always recommending things, and it's just great.
Yeah,
and, Michael was always great, Small, as well. He used to come up with some great ideas, and I know he's taking a break at the moment, but it's, it's just fantastic. And I was going to say, from the blogging point of view, for me, the blogs I've read, like Jason from Unassisted, I mean, he likes to talk about new bands, and he's not afraid to kind of put his head on the block, really. And I've read Ness's and Michael's Samot, and even Jim from Puppet Rebellion. I mean, he's hilarious with some of his, and it's just really inspiring to read that, and then you think, well, actually, this is a great tool.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's one of those things, like, I wish I had more time to do it, but I don't always, because mainly, like, I kind of lean more towards reviews, because there's sometimes, yes, I would like to rant, but either I'd repeat myself too much, or it would just get probably a little too crude and vulgar to actually type it up and actually want it to be up online,
Well, it's not quite the same, is it? It's actually kind of ranting, I suppose, but writing, yeah, I mean, it surprised me, but I think now I've written a few music reviews, I mean, obviously it will get easier because it's a level of writing that I just wasn't used to. And writing short stories and poetry comes from within my experiences and everything else, whereas writing about music reviews, you're writing about someone else and their creativity, and it's important that you're, selective with what you say and how you say it.
Oh, I'm not saying. I mean, I'd never rant on about a band in a bad way, unless, like, I really didn't like them. But even if I didn't, I still wouldn't be willing to say that other than to someone I know, as opposed to saying it actually on the air or writing it up, because that can always come back to bite you and bite you hard. So,
well, also, it's your opinion, isn't it? And we all have opinions which are important, but we need to be careful that we're not, feeling that is completely, none of us are completely right, and it's important that you can, again, it's back to listening, I think.
Well, that's right, and that's the thing is with myself personally, if I get a little too heated, pretty much, and it's not meant in a disrespectful way, but pretty much every other word is an F-bomb or some form of it.
You surprise me, Dr. Baines.
Oh, yeah. I bet, eh? Well, it takes a lot to get me worked up, so it's not something that happens too often. But again, and that's something I go on a tirade. I can more or less keep to myself, and kind of we'll say rant about it when no one else is around. Just because I know myself. If I get way too heated, then either I'll be one too many vulgarities, or it just won't make any sense because I'll kind of be jumping around too much. And that's,
yeah, well, it's probably better. Well, jump around to the music, put music on, and then you calm down.
not literally jumping around, but
no, I know. English wind up.
And you always manage to do it to me. You're one of the only people who can wind me up like that. Not to the point where I would just disgust, but we'll wrap up with that, but now let's get into your blogs because the very first blog you did, and I made sure to promote the hell out of that one, was your review on the Bedroom Hours debut album Hinterland, which I'm a big fan to begin with, and I was really hopeful for it when it came out, and I was really surprised and really impressed when I first listened to the whole thing all the way through, just because, in my eyes, because I've been with the Bedroom Hour almost all the way along, meaning I interviewed their guitarist Rob before their very first EP came out, Themes. And then I interviewed them when Themes came out. And we did song for song, all 5 tracks, and then kept in touch with them, that sort of thing. And then next thing I know, though, they have a debut album out, and we're at it again. So I've been essentially kind of following the progression along, and the amount of talent that band has, and how far they've actually come to develop what they have now. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, after I did the live review, they sort of DM'd me and asked if I'd review the album. And I was really chuffed, and I thought, well, it's a challenge. And so they sent me sort of the album prior to its release. And so that particular weekend, I was really busy, and I was travelling the country to visit friends and things. And so on the train, I'm sort of listening to this new album, and it was just amazing. I mean, World War Me was my little, I loved it, absolutely loved it. And Rob, the guitarist, I mean, he's got some kind of, I don't know, he's created something to create these sounds which are unbelievable. And I just think they do have a real diversity to the album. And when I was sort of writing it up, I thought, okay, I'm not going to go through each individual song. But then I found myself listening to each individual song. So it became a bit of a mission then. I thought, no, I'm going to write up every single song. And of course, that's, it's hard because you're trying to find the words, but I did it. So I'm quite proud of that. I think it wasn't easy to do, but I did it, and it was a challenge. I challenged myself. And I'm really pleased I did it, because I think if I ever had to review an album again, if I was lucky enough to be asked, then it would be, I would have a bit more of a formula to work from, that I've already set up, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, and you got a point, because I have a few I'm working on right now. I've got about 3 or 4 actually, and the albums I've heard many times. It's just trying to get time to sit down, and when I start working on one, sometimes I'll jump to the other one. But it's just a matter of trying to kind of keep my head straight, make sure I keep them separated, so I don't put what I want to say for one album into the other one.
Yeah, well, it's, you have to, I think you have to focus on, and to be fair, the amount of work and time and everything else that's given to it, if you're going to review something, you need to kind of give that kind of effort back, because I just think it's important. So I think for me, I did give it a lot of time, and I did actually re-listen to the songs. And I think, when you listen to them again and again, the first listening is always, it's always difficult because you don't know how it's going to pan out. But then if you actually are attracted to several of the songs, then it makes it easier because you can actually work with those songs first, and then you work sort of backwards. But I loved it. I enjoyed doing it.
Well, the one thing that I pointed out, the one thing we talked about with Rob and I is even though it's, because the first thing I mentioned, I said, no, the album is really good. You guys did an awesome job. You can tell your progression, that whole thing. So the one thing I noticed is that despite the song titles, it's still an upbeat album, because there's a lot of kind of almost we'll say darker song titles, like Nocturnal for one, and Sea Without Water and that sort of thing, and it's like, but it still has that upbeat feel to it, the kind of the bedroom, we'll call it the Bedroom Hour signature, where it's, even though I got a song title that sounds like really kind of dark and deep, like the song's still amazing, but they still keep you moving and up and moving. So it's not like one of those ones you're singing thinking like, oh my god, what have I done with my life,
Well, I think also because they draw on influences. I mean, there was so many things where they were giving a nod to certain bands that you just go, wow, this is like really cool. And, you know, as in sort of my review, you could hear certain bands that for me used to blow me away. And I used to think, I just thought to myself, these guys live would be amazing. And I haven't seen them yet, but that's another one on my list.
Yeah, if I was only in that side of the pond, I feel like you're going to a lot more shows, let me tell you. Because right now, all I have are Gary's videos. I think he's at GBH8.
Oh, Gary.
Yeah.
We love Gary.
So yeah, so I'm kind of seeing these videos of the live performances and kind of living kind of vicariously through everybody else. Like, since it'll probably be a while before I actually get over there, it's the next best thing.
Yeah, well, no, the thing is, you've just answered that, haven't you? Because you've kind of talked about blogs. And I think, you know, if somebody can lead you into what it feels like at a blog, you know, at a live gig, then if you can't attend it, then that matters. And obviously, if somebody can record it, and obviously Gary's, you know, doing a lot of photography now as well.
Right.
I've seen, you know, I know Gary quite well. So it's, you know, it's ace. Brilliant. If, you know, it's all about sharing, isn't it? And getting everybody on board to promote new music, really.
Yeah, and you know, and that's one thing I love doing, just because there's so much good stuff out there. But at the same time too, is you can't get to everything. So a lot of times, like, you want to get to it, just like I just don't have the time. Like, and finally do, but maybe like a month later. But at least you get to it at some point.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be expected to go to all the gigs. I mean, unless it's your job. You know, like Trust Fox, where, you know, he's there for the gigs and things like that. That's it, you know, it's a different life. But I mean, if you can get to live gigs, I mean, it is amazing. I mean, I feel in the last sort of 6 months or so, I mean, I've really gone to see a lot of the bands that I wanted to see, and it's been amazing. And meeting people like Square Pig, Fezzer 70, Shabba, you know, it's fantastic. It is really good. There's like a community on Twitter where you've spoken to people but you don't know them, and then you actually meet up with them, and they're really cool people.
Well, and that's it. And the only people I've met that I spoke to on Twitter was that two local London bands, the Gypsy Ghost and High School Sweetheart, which was really cool to meet them in person and talk to them. And when I had High School Sweetheart over here a few weeks ago, it was a lot of fun. I mean, they are very nice and really good people, and it was a lot of fun. And let me tell you, the only concern throughout the whole thing was my two cats coming down making noise. 'Cause I was a little worried about it, but it was fine. They did come downstairs, but
Don't talk to me about noise. I've got two Siamese.
Oh, I know.
You've never heard Siamese talk.
But yeah. But luckily, all I heard was the bells on their collars jingling a little bit, and one of them actually knocked over a glass of water. Thankfully, the glass was empty and it didn't break or anything like that. But it was funny because one of the guitars slash singer, all you hear her say is, "Go lie down, Wyatt," which is one of my cat's name.
They don't use their tongue. Cats don't use their tongue.
So it was funny. I mean, but that was like, and then they just settled right in. Like, Wyatt's got his regular spot on top of the couch. Like, he's got his little blanket he lies on. So he jumped up and settled right in there. And the other one, she settled herself on one of their laps, and they were fine with it. So I was like, all right, well, let's continue here. But it was a lot of fun, especially kind of get like your free own personalized concert, because they played 3 B-sides.
Wow.
That they played one of them live, the show there too, I'd heard before, so it was really cool. But like I said, they were a very good bunch of people, and it was a lot of fun. And that's one thing I'd like to be able to do more of. It's just a question of finding the bands that are local enough that they can come by, sit down and have a chat, sort of thing.
Fantastic. I mean, I think the bands I've met, I mean, well, Puppet Rebellion, the Unassisted, they've all been so friendly, really, really cool people, and you know, it's great. It's just, you know, because you follow them on Twitter, you play their music, you interact, and then, you know, to actually see them live, and then you get sort of an interaction, you know, in person. It's fantastic.
I totally, completely agree with that.
I mean, David Liversidge is another one I'd love to see live, and he was at the Puppet Rebellion gig I went to at the Academy 3 in Manchester, and he was there watching them, and I went, ooh, I know him, and so I had a quick chat. Fantastic! It was like, wow, this is great.
You know what?
I've heard he's amazing live as well. I've heard really good stuff about him.
You know, I could just picture you doing that too, because like most of the time you seem so focused, like, ooh, I know him.
I know him.
Yes.
I know it's a bit pathetic, really. Well,
No, it's not pathetic.
Actually, do you know what's cool though? Is they love, you're just talking to normal people, and that's the point, isn't it? At the end of the day, Twitter is an unusual thing, really, because it's like a world, but then there is a reality, and the reality I've experienced, I haven't met anybody who's not cool. I think everybody I've met has been brilliant.
Well, that's definitely good, because I mean, you will get a few here and there that are not the nicest people in the world, or not what you expected. But I'm glad you got what you expected most of the time, because there I'm sure there are gonna be times here and there, not too often, that you will get those like, oh, they were all right people, but not somebody I want to hang out with after work, sort of thing.
Well, yeah, no, exactly. So how do you see kind of blogging as a bonus to the music industry?
Well, it's a huge bonus, just because it gives the indie artist a chance for other people to write about their music, as opposed to all the mainstream stuff where you'll find a bunch of different websites, but most stuff that's in there, you've heard 1,000,001 times, and they don't really need that sort of press. They've already got enough press as it is. And blogging, on the other hand, for indie bands is another form of good media for them, just because it keeps on adding more to their repertoire. It keeps on giving them a boost, because besides Twitter, Facebook, that sort of thing, SoundCloud, and getting them on, getting their shows played on podcasts and the radio sort of thing. Now this is just one more thing that'll help them out, because not everybody has a chance to do everything, right? So they may listen to it a few times, but you know what? I got more time to read something, so they'll sit down and read the blogs. Like, you know what? I can go back and listen to it a second time, or you know what? I'm actually going to pick this album up and give it a try.
I do think people, if they can, sort of. I mean, I blogged recently. My recent blog was about a 14-year-old in Weston-super-Mare, and I just did it because it was a chance sort of going, and I thought, well, that's new music, and he was writing his own stuff, but it was just, I thought, well, why does it always have to be, sort of, I think sometimes it's nice to write a blog about somebody that maybe doesn't ever get that, and then maybe that creates an interest. So I think it is a powerful tool. I'm starting to enjoy it, but again, it's a time thing, and that's why I've chosen variety. So I can go from poetry to music reviews. I don't want to stick in one genre where I have to go to a gig, or because I just wouldn't be able to do it, and then the blog would become sort of stale, I suppose. But what I'm able to do is actually everything I'm creating I can share on it, but I can also challenge myself and share other stuff. And I think that's the beauty of blogging. It's fantastic, really.
Oh, I totally agree. And it's one thing, like I said, I wish I had more time to do. Like, I mean, I do every once in a while, but I haven't done one in like months. Just because like the show alone takes a lot of prep time. Like, even if it's kind of like, we'll call it kind of spur of the moment show, I still got to plan. I still got to lay the tunes out the way I think they should be played, and sort of meaning like I want it to flow well. I don't want it to kind of be like kind of all over the place, because it can be pretty boring. I kind of want more or less a smooth transition, So almost like an album in general, instead of starting off strong, kind of tapering off, picking up strong again, like that sort of thing. So and just
I don't think you should kind of punish yourself for not having time for that, because you're creating a radio show, so you're at the same time vocally expressing your opinion. You're talking with people like myself or whoever from Twitter, and at the end of the day, I think just spreading the word in whatever media form it is that suits for you, it is cool, and I think, and of course, your show takes preparation and everything else, and it's the same as blogging, and that takes priority because it's your show.
Well, you know what? I do really appreciate that. and we are literally just about out of time here. So this has been a lot of fun. If I'm sure the audience would agree, we'd love to have you back. I'd love to have you back on again at some point. And
Brilliant. I was just going to say, your band interviews, just to say to you, you do a marvellous job. I think they're ace.
oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's something.
I mean it.
Well, I know they can't see me, but you can see me because I'm pretty red right now. So.
I can't see you because I've got a twisting little ball in the middle of my screen. So.
Oh, you got one of those things, eh? But that's gonna wrap it up. Thank you very much for coming on the show, and I'll definitely love to have you on again very soon.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, guys. Until next time, this has been Bloggers Corner with Forgotten Bee filling in for Britt. Britt will be back next week with a double episode of Bloggers Corner. Until next time, I'm sure we can convince Forgotten Bee to come on again. We'll talk to you very soon. Bones out.